Everybody, welcome to Daily Distinction. So glad you are here. Thank you. I want to thank right off the bat my great friend Dr. Joseph Michelli. Joe had me on his live stream earlier today, and it was a real privilege to be a part of that. If you're not familiar with him, I know you know his books, The Starbucks Experience, the book about Ritz-Carlton, the gold standard. He has written some of the most, pardon the pun, but some of the most iconic books about corporations and about the customer experience in history. And he's a longtime friend. And the fact that he would have me on his live stream was a real pleasure. So I put a copy of it on my personal Facebook page. I'll catch up and get it on the other one soon. I also did it on my LinkedIn profile. So if you haven't caught it yet, please do. He surprised me with a couple of things, and man, it was he blew me away with a couple of things that he was doing. It was really cool. And in just a little bit, when we get finished up here, I'm going to be doing a live stream with my great friend Dan Genghis. And Dan is a customer experience guru, and he's extraordinary. So I'm really looking forward to that. It's live stream day. I'm on with a bunch of folks today, and I appreciate them be on and talk about the Distinction Summit and everything else that's going on. So Dwayne, haven't seen you for a while. Great to have you here. Thank you so much. Brian, go time. Coffee cheers. I got my cup right here too, man. I'm joining you, ready to go with that. Yes, we did announce speaker number 2, presenter number 2. I got more on the way here in a little bit. Yeah, Brian and Joseph is just such an extraordinary guy. It was really a privilege to have the opportunity to share time with him and talking about all those kinds of good things. So, hey, Scott, great to see you. By the way, when I was on with Joseph Michelli, the Crothersville Town Hall checked in with me today. So we had Crothersville covered on our live stream earlier. Weldon, always great to see you. Charles, I knew that you weren't going to be here for a couple days, so I'm glad you're back. You're back. Glad that you are here. Thanks for joining in. And today we're going to talk about an important aspect. It is the high cost of low expectations. Now, we can choose to expect anything that we want to expect. And I mean that organizationally, I mean that individually. We can expect anything we want. We've got 100% control over what we expect. But I do want to suggest to you, it's easy during these challenging times and in a pandemic to lower our expectations. We see that a lot. And we're going to be talking about what low expectations are and how they impact the results that we get when we lower our expectations. There is a price to be paid for low expectations. And we're going to talk about what that price is today. Before we do that, Brian mentioned it. Yes, we did reveal the second of several special guests joining us for the Distinction Summit. And the second guest we introduced to you today via email is my great friend, Glenn Morshower. There's not too many people that can say that they protected the president and ended up in a romance with the first lady, that they saved the world, and that they are a billionaire CEO. And that's Glenn. Talk about distinction. How is this possible? One person, if you don't know who Glenn Morshower is, you'll remember Agent Aaron Pierce, the Secret Service agent that protected the president in 24 with Kiefer Sutherland. He served as general. And by the way, Michael Bay, the director of all the Transformer movies, loves him so much. He even named the character in the Transformer movies General Morshower. So he used his own name. How cool is that? That's when you know the director loves you. So he helped save the world in Transformer movies. And your kids will know who he is as the general for the Transformer movies. And he's currently the billionaire CEO, father of the main character in the Fox TV show The Resident. So you'll love Glenn. And obviously Glenn and I, along with Ken Walls, do the Ken and Glenn show with a guy named Scott every Sunday. But what we're going to talk about with Glenn is really unique, and I think really important, because acting is one of the more competitive fields out there. You know, Glenn made his first movie in the 70s, and he's still a regular on a television series and making movies today. So how do you get to the top of what you do as a character actor and stay there? Right? I mean, we've seen things come and go. If you're old enough to remember the pet rock, you know, I mean, there's been fads, whatever it might be. We see it now. There's fads that come and go. But the real key is not only to create distinction, but to sustain it. And that's where Glenn can really give us some great insight. What does it take to not only create distinction, but sustain it and to have a great career over an extended period of time? Absolutely, Scott. Yep, that is Glenn. He's all that and more. And so, we haven't had a chance to really drill deeply into that on the conversations that we've had, and we're kind of saving that for the Distinction Summit. So I'm so excited and privileged that Glenn is going to be there. If you haven't yet, please check out distinctionsummit.com. That's distinctionsummit.com. And when you're there, you get $100 off your registration when you use the code DISTINCT2020. Distinct 2020. Just use that code, get you $100 off. I know that many of you here have already registered for that, and I truly, truly appreciate it. So thank you for that. All right, here's the topic of today's program. We're going to talk about the high cost of low expectations. Have you seen that in the places where you're doing business now? I know that I have. That, they even sent an email that we're going to do this. We're lowering the contact that we're going to have because, and it's like they're pulling back. They're pulling back in their level of service. They're pulling back in so many things. And there's a cost to that. There is a cost to lowering your expectations. And a lot of times we only think of the savings that we get as an organization because we're cutting back. Oh, look at what we'll save. But we don't look at the other side of the coin. I mean, this strikes me anytime someone says it's a numbers game, whether it's sales or whatever. Yeah, it's a numbers game, but we have to know all the numbers. Today, they're talking about one of the top stories in today's Wall Street Journal is Johnson & Johnson. You probably saw this yesterday, moving forward phase 3 of the clinical trials to try to get a COVID vaccine. Why are they doing the clinical trials? Because they need all the numbers. I mean, it might, you get the vaccine, it might help build up antibodies, but if it gives you a heart attack, do you really want it? That's why we got to test it. We got to know all the numbers. We've got to see all of the ramifications. What are the potential side effects? But we need the same thing in anything we do in business. This shouldn't be limited to a vaccine. It shouldn't be limited to just, medicine. We need in business as well. So sometimes we look at the savings of lowering expectations, but we don't look at the cost. We don't look at what we lose. We don't look by that. So what do we mean by low expectations? How would you define that? And I think it really comes down to three things. When we talk about lowered expectations, we're really looking at three things. Number one is we see too little. It is that phenomenon of not looking at all of the information. It is that phenomenon of not seeing everything. We only look at one part of the picture and we lower our expectations because we don't see the entire picture. That's part of what we're going to be talking about at the Distinction Summit, and part of what I think we all need to be working on is seeing the big picture, seeing all of it. And that's part of what we're going to discuss, but I think it's part of what we got to get on the table even now. I don't want to wait, right? It's that we see too little. We have to broaden our perspective. We have to open our eyes. We have to be willing to see more. So seeing too little lowers our expectations. Here's the second. Expecting too little. Expecting too little. I was listening to, I'm listening to the audio book, and I don't, gosh, I'm afraid I say this and it sounds political. I read a lot of different viewpoints. All right. So just saying I'm reading something doesn't mean I'm endorsing something, right? I like to read diverse viewpoints. So I'm not saying whether I agree with it or not, but I'm listening to the audio book of the new Bob Woodward book about the president, his administration, called Rage. And this isn't political, but one of the things that's really interesting is the discussion when the coronavirus first came out. How do we approach this? And some people were saying, we need a Manhattan Project. We need a moonshot project about the coronavirus. Now, if you think about those two projects, the Manhattan Project is what developed the atom bomb in World War II. And the moonshot, obviously, is when Kennedy said, by the end of the decade, 10 years, we're going to go from flying planes to landing men on the moon and returning them safely. 10 years. by expecting a great deal, they got a great deal in return. I think sometimes we lower our expectations and we get what we expect. And we're going to talk more about that before we finish today. But what are your expectations? I mean, honestly, sincerely, down deep, the gut level, what do you expect? And could it be that you're getting too little because you expect too little? And and then also believing too little. Whether it's believing in others, the people you work with, work for, work around, or believing in yourself too little. When we see too little, expect too little, and believe too little, we get too little. I love this quote. If you treat an individual as he will stay as he is. But if you treat him as if he were what he ought to be and could be, he will become what he ought to be and could be. Boy, think about that one for a little bit. That's a powerful quote, isn't it? Treat an individual as he is, he will stay as he is. And obviously, this was written centuries ago, and it's today we would use less gender-specific language. But to alter it, if you treat an individual as he or she is, he or she will stay as they are. But if you treat them as they were what they ought to be and what they could be, they will become what they ought to be and what they could be. So how do we, and I think you could look in the mirror and say the same thing as well. If you treat yourself as you are, you will stay as you are. But if you treat yourself as you ought to become and as you could become, then you would become what you could be and what you ought to be as well. So let's talk about the role of expectations. You know, I said earlier, it's what you expect. Are we expecting too little? Let's talk for just a minute about the role of expectations. Let me give you one example. It's a classic one, but there's a new study out reconfirming this. I was reading this morning, and it says that teacher expectations tend to line up with student outcomes. Now, why does that happen? Why does the expectation, oh, and Talene, yeah, absolutely, treating someone as what they could be. And to me, I love you put the heart there because that truly is a sign of love, isn't it? When we love someone, we treat them as they could be. Teacher expectations tend to line up with student outcomes. Now, there's two ways that you can look at that. I mean, I'm here talking about expectations. There's two ways that you can look at that. You could say the reason this happens is because teachers are really good at predicting outcomes. I mean, it might not be that they have an influence of it. It might just be that teachers are really good at predicting the outcome. That's a possibility. I want to be fair about it. But I'm going to suggest to you, it's much more likely that high expectations that the student has about, that the teacher has about the student. When the teacher has high expectations about the student, what happens? More resources are devoted to the student. Have you noticed that? The teachers tend to give more attention and they spend more time and they get more connected with the students that they presume are going to do well. And so those high expectations translate, and the school does as well. Yeah, the school will devote more attention as well to the student and they make more of an effort there. So let's consider the opposite. What if teachers are negatively biased in their expectations about a student? And because of that negative expectations, there's fewer resources being devoted to that student. Teacher time, school resources. And so the student sees the teacher devoting expectations elsewhere, internalizes that they don't deserve it. They lower the expectations of themselves and therefore have lower results. I'll bet you've seen that as well. that people that don't expect enough of themselves or don't perceive that there is a high level of expectation with others, and it becomes the reality. Reminds me of the story about the teacher who loved that she had top level students. Yeah, exactly. Charles, that's exactly it. She believed that she had top level students, and because of her belief, they attained that. Hey, Kathy, great to see you. David Helgeson, who's a clinical psychologist, sees 8 to 9 patients a day, say the biggest problem with most people, right, is what they think and believe about themselves. Hey, Danny, always great to see you. Glad you like this. I saw you in church virtually the other Sunday, so great to see you. Devising a plan to meet high expectations and implementing the plan with the expectations laid out is higher result. Yeah, and that's the thing, Donovan. It's a great point. Is how do we do this on the front end, right? How do we say on the front end that's the plan? Many years ago, I was standing in a car dealership, and I get my car serviced, right? And while I'm waiting on my car, I kind of wandered in the showroom many years ago. And here's all the experience. And as often happens at car dealerships, all the salespeople are standing around talking to each other because there wasn't anybody. And this huge, young African-American guy walked in the showroom. And he was wearing jeans. I mean, he wasn't poorly dressed, but he wasn't, he wasn't wearing business attire either. And he starts looking around the most expensive cars in the showroom. And nobody walked up to him. And we can play all the scenarios about, prejudice and race and that and whatever. I also think his youth contributed to that as well. His attire contributed to that as well. None of the experience that. And what I found out later was the least experienced, the newbie on the showroom floor, it starts approaching him. And I watched as the old experienced sales guys kind of nudged each other and said, watch that. So he walks over and he starts talking to the guy and treated him. The salesperson was excellent in terms of how, and the young man pointed at literally the biggest, most expensive car in the showroom. And he said, I think I'll take that one. And come find out he was a first round draft choice of the Indianapolis Colts. And he was using his signing money to buy his dad the biggest car he could get. And he bought it on the spot. The low expectations that those other salespeople had a high cost. They didn't make an immediate sale. But yet the salesperson who approached with good expectations, right? High expectations, got an extraordinary result. Now, look, we can all point out things that have happened, but man, it's so powerful to me, the role that expectations play. Brian, Trevor Mowad's story when he took the SAT, they said he was gifted with his score until he found out years later that they made a mistake on his score. Yeah, but when they say you're gifted, you start believing, I must be gifted. I love that. Kathy, he says most problems he deals with every day are violated expectations. Yeah, couples, businesses, that is, oh, wow, powerful, so true. Danny, on art gallery where the artist was there meeting people, I was ignored as I didn't look like I could afford his painting, but you're ready to buy. Been saving up a long time. Now you didn't want one of his works. What a story. That is, yeah. Eric, my friend, you are so right. Expectations are reality. So what are our expectations? Right? It's a critically important aspect. The expectations that you have of others plays an important role in the results that you receive from them. Have you ever worked for a boss whose instructions were, now don't screw this up? I have. I'm sure somebody here is going to mess this up. Don't screw that. I've heard that. I've sat in meetings and heard that. I had a boss. Well, he's my boss's boss, but I had a boss one time, and I cannot imagine that he could have set lower expectations. And I found out later he worked for a boss that was the same way. And I guess he figured when he became the boss, he was going to inflict that on his employees. I don't know. I have no way to understand how a PhD who should know better play the game that way. But you know what? There's an old song by Daryl. Oh, it starts to say Daryl Strawberry, Daryl Singletary, country music singer. That's why it was close by one there. Daryl Singletary, the late, great singer Daryl Singletary. Somebody should have been a star, and for some reason didn't happen. But he had a country music song I loved called I'm Living Up to Her Low Expectations. That kind of says it all, isn't it? That's what we've seen happen. Yes, your personality is your reality. Oh, Eric, I had not heard that. I know who you're talking about with Joe, but I didn't realize that. Yes, we prejudge ourselves. Absolutely. So are you living up to your own low expectations? Because the expectations you have of yourself plays an important role in what you get and what you receive. By the way, this is often called the Pygmalion effect. The Pygmalion effect, or sometimes it's called the Rosenthal effect, because psychiatrist Robert Rosenthal is who discovered it. It's the psychological phenomenon where high expectations lead to improved performance. It's been psychologically documented. It's been researched. It's been proven that the expectations impact. Charles, your boss was so bad you finally had to say, I'll save you from yourself. Oh, once again, yeah, and remarkable how that's consistent, isn't it? I got to save you from yourself again. Hey, Kevin, man, it's always great to see you. I find the trick to keeping my self expectations high is to not see, yeah, there you go. Don't see a temporary setback as permanent. You've seen it, I'm sure, Kevin. It's a great line. Either I win or I learn. Right? Lose isn't a part of that equation. I either win or I learn. Eric, I prejudge myself winning all the time, as you should. That's so cool. So the important point that I want to bring home to you today is we need to stop seeing too little. We need to stop expecting too little. And we certainly need to stop believing too little. Because when we treat others and ourselves as we could be and as we should be and as we ought to be, then we become what we could be, what we should be, and what we ought to be. That happens as we deal with customers. That happens as we deal with colleagues. That happens as we engage with anything in life. So I'm going to expect that you will join us at the Distinction Summit. I'm going to expect that you're going to be back here tomorrow for our next edition of Daily Distinction. Hey, thank you for sharing. Thank you for being a part of this. Everybody contributed today. Gosh, everybody getting involved. Man, I love that. If you're watching on replay, thanks for hanging in here and watching all of it on replay as well. I really, truly appreciate everybody. And I look forward to talking to you again tomorrow on our next Daily Distinction.